Howdy, folks. I'm Mark, and today I am joined by Elizabeth Coates Bowen. Elizabeth, thank you for coming on back.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be back.
Well, absolutely. Good to have you for this short talk about video games. And you are listening to Quick Play, so let's get right into it. So, today we are talking about the licensed game, which is a game based on a pre-existing thing, whether that's a movie or a TV show or a book or a comic book or toy or whatnot. So it's been a long staple of video games. I was doing some research and found on a kind of dubious Wikipedia knockoff, so take this with a grain of salt, but the first licensed game is apparently the 1976 arcade racing game Fonz, which is based on Happy Days.
Wow.
There was an attempted Jaws game from Atari before that, but they did not get the rights, but they still made Shark Jaws, whatever. But the reason these developers will swing for these licensed games, licensed media, makes a lot of sense. You can rely on just pre-existing success to give your game a boost, which sometimes they rely on that a little too much and they make a terrible game. But we've seen some good licensed games more recently and kind of throughout our lifetimes. But Elizabeth, what draws you personally to playing a licensed game?
Yes. Well, I'll first start off by saying that I had to Google what is a license game.
It's
You
a
asked
weird
me to
term.
do this
I feel
topic.
like there should be a better term for it than talking about the rights behind something. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. I guess IP is intellectual property is now such a commonly used term that
yeah,
made more sense to me as a descriptor. But
sure.
one of my favorite shows growing up was Blue's Clues, where you could
Classic.
jump
Yeah.
into a book and be in the world of that story. And I feel like that is a little bit the experience of a licensed video game. So you can have a more immersive experience of a world that you're already really interested in. Unfortunately, not quite to the level of Blue's Clues, unless I guess you're doing the virtual reality goggles, which
Right.
I've never played before. Um,
Yeah.
And I think there's also just like a lot of people like things they're already familiar with. You want to go with something that you already have a connection to the world or the characters.
Yeah.
You see that a lot with how Marvel is continuing to dominate, or not as much anymore, but for a long time dominated movie box offices because
Right.
it was
Yeah.
like people are already familiar with that story.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I even think about it from that angle of almost every media is iterative and just kind of builds on what's very common, or not common, but what's has a track record of success. Yeah, I love the Blues Clues example. I haven't thought about that in a while. I was trying to think of is it Blues Clues or is it the what's the is the live action show with the beagle that was a detective.
Oh,
Um,
yes. Oh my
it's
gosh. And
escapes me.
it would be all of these like classic
Yes,
literature. Oh my
Wishbone.
gosh.
I found it.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
But then I didn't remember. At first, I was thinking it was Wishbone, but then I didn't remember that. Yeah, Blue's Clues did have that as well. And I was like, that does seem really fun. And so that's a great way to put it. Of wanting to inhabit these worlds, or kind of inhabit these characters. I feel like there's kind of two categories of either what it would be like to be this character, which you see that a lot in superhero based games, but sometimes you get kind of what it would be like to be in this world, which you see more with Hogwarts Legacy, with the whole Harry Potter universe, or Middle Earth games are much more like this now ever since they stopped making the movie tie-in games.
I mean, except for that new Gollum game,
Oh my
very,
goodness.
very much tied to a character there.
Oh wow. There was a time where that game seemed really interesting and then it came out and it was not so interesting anymore. What a bummer.
This still seemed pretty interesting. I didn't really want to play it, but it still seemed interesting to read about it.
Oh yes. Oh man. What a bummer. Have you seen stuff about this Shire video game? I forget what's it's literally
Oh,
just Stardew Valley but in the Shire.
I mean, that looks very cozy. I will check that game out. I don't think it's come out yet, has it?
I don't think so either. I'm trying to Oh, it's Tales of the Shire is what I'm thinking of. So that's coming out. That's more of like your, just Joe Schmo Hobbit, um, bopping around in the Shire. Um, anyway, so we talked about kind of like why we love these things. Do you have a few examples? Like, what's your favorite licensed video games, either from like growing up or more recently?
Yeah, I think growing up, my favorite licensed video games were um, pretty much any Lego video game, whether
Mm,
that's Star
hmm.
Wars or Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings. That came a little
Yeah,
bit later, but
yeah,
I think they did a really good job of making a good game that has the tie-in of whatever pre-existing story. I also remember really loving there was like a Lion the Witch of the Wardrobe Chronicles of Narnia video
yes.
game
I had
that
that
I
too. That was my
loved.
first like actual home console video game because I got a GameCube and I got Lions in the Wardrobe with it. Yeah,
We mentioned Hogwarts Legacy before. That's another one that
yeah,
I really loved. Um, and to kind of go back to that question of like why do people like licensed video games? Like actually there was a kind of middle-aged woman that I know who's not really a video game person, but she told me she was like planning to buy a video game console to play Hogwarts Legacy. Um,
incredible. Wow.
so I think that that game's really beautiful, and
Yeah.
you inhabit the world a lot without losing to like a crappy version of a story that you love that
Yeah.
can sometimes be the franchise video game experience.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah, yeah. Did
I'm
you
pretty
ever
new. Oh yeah,
did you ever play the like old Harry Potter like movie tie-in games?
I
I,
remember playing the video game for the fifth movie on a
okay.
PSP,
Wow.
and
Okay.
mo- my I don't know that I ever got very far in that game. I remember
Okay.
enjoying it. Um, my video game consoles were actually my brother's, so a lot of times my video game playing
Yeah.
time was very limited uh, by him and
Limited.
also by my parents. So
Sure.
I remember enjoying that, but I don't think
Hmm.
I had the same level of enjoyment doing that as I have had with Hogwarts Legacy.
Yeah. There definitely is, as like tech has advanced, like just the when we talk about inhabiting a world, like now you have open world video games, like that letting the Harry Potter universe and Hogwarts be like just an open area you can just wander around in, which is like what everyone, like every Harry Potter fan has dreamt of just like hanging out in Hogwarts. Um, that's like that's now actually can kind of be realized. Like on the flip side, like one of my favorites is the new 2018 Spider-Man video game, and also loving like
Hmm.
the old Tobey Maguire tie-in tie-in games. But those were just like, yeah, you get to be Spider-Man, swing around New York City, just kind of swing around, do the thing, like, and be Spider-Man. And that's kind of all you really needed to be sold on it was just simply like experience this thing that you have seen from afar for as the audience. Like now you can kind of get a taste of what it's like.
Hmm. Yes, right. I've also been. I'm pretty early in this game, but I've been playing Star Wars Outlaws,
Oh,
and
nice. Yeah.
I haven't quite made it off the first world yet. But
Okay.
I've been seeing on Twitter people who are like, "I finally went to Tashi Station. Like Luke never made it there, but I did."
That's hilarious.
Um, yeah, so I think that open world thing is a really big appeal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. Any others that come to mind of like favorites or
Oh,
yeah.
Knights of the Old Republic.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
mean, that's like so influential, I think, in video games, especially Star Wars video games. Um, I know I was like Googling a little bit. That I know that there's like Goldeneye, I think, is like a
Yeah.
big, like, high, well regarded
Yeah.
franchise game, but I have not played that one. And I actually never played the Lord of the Ring video games that are kind of older at this point now.
Okay.
Um,
I I've played a little bit of them. I know they're like actually really well loved. Like they're pretty good for being a movie tie-in game.
Yeah. Some of the older ones, I think, my brother got me to play Arkham Asylum
Yeah,
recently.
yeah, yeah.
And I think I just couldn't, like, some of the game mechanics felt so dated. I wasn't able to, like, really enjoy it the way that I probably
Oh,
would have if I
interesting.
had played it back when it had
Huh.
first come out.
Yeah.
Um,
Interesting. Okay.
yeah, yeah.
I that's I had so like Arkham Asylum and Arkham City are on my kind of like short list of just some of my favorite licensed games. Um, and one of the things I'm thinking of is like what is the difference between like a good licensed game or a bad licensed game and a great licensed game, and I kind of even thinking of like I think a good licensed game serves the source material, but like a great one kind of serves the gameplay and kind of uses the IP as the backdrop to like really push forward a good gameplay mechanic. And the Arkham games actually, I'm sure it's done before, but it would feel like the Arkham games for the first time, like that particular combat system where it's just like you're just mashing X, but it actually like feels really like impactful and you're really good at it and like you're doing crazy flips and stuff and then you can counter. Is that kind of what you're thinking of, or was that what was your experience like with Arkham?
I guess it felt like I was a little bit too much on just like a conveyor belt, and like
Okay.
there wasn't as much skill needed for me, or like figuring things out, or like um, not as much to explore. And I felt like it was like a little button mashy in a way that it didn't matter, like the
Interesting. Yeah.
timing of when I was doing it, or like the combinations. And maybe I just
Yeah.
didn't get far enough into the game to like for there to be more complex gameplay there. Um, but
It
that was
doesn't
just
get that
my
much more complex, honestly. And like that's part of it is it kind of just ushers you around, and that you feel really cool as Batman because you're just not doing much, and he's doing crazy stuff for you. So it makes total sense. It would feel like that.
yeah. I think another thing I love in a video game, especially if it's in a world that I'm already interested in, is being able to like go into a random cottage somewhere and like pick up the ephemera, the
Yeah.
letters, the like whatever, and like look at the art that's on the walls, read the letters that
Yeah.
are in the drawers. Like that's something that I love, and
Mm-hmm.
why I love open world as well.
Yeah.
Um, but it's cool to be able to do that. Like Hogwarts Legacy does that really well. You can like eavesdrop on the students having
Yeah.
conversations about a professor they hate, or like some illicit activity that they're trying to hide.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, and that's what really makes the worlds feel alive. I guess like versus it's been so long since I played the Arkham games, but like yeah, of kind of just being able to just hang out in those worlds is a really cool thing about
Yeah,
video games.
right. And I think the Arkham games, like I think the cutscenes and the voice acting still, you know, felt like they had good quality voice actors,
Sure.
and that was like, I think what a lot of people were drawn to, and I think that still
Yeah.
held up. But I think to me, a lot of times, it's not so much the cutscenes that are like the primary draw for me. It's more like that
Yeah.
inhabiting the world.
Yeah. It's like when you have so many movies on these characters too, like you don't really need the games to deliver a good movie.
Yeah,
Although I do think the 2018 Spider-Man is the fifth best Spider-Man movie, I think, but that's not quite on the same playing field. Uh, well, our time here is short, but before we go, what's a licensed property that you want a game of? Whether or not it's had a game already, I don't know.
oh yeah. So I think I have two answers here. Maybe
I'm ready.
the I think Dune would be pretty cool.
Okay, yeah.
I think maybe, am I making this up? There might be one coming out.
There is one. I don't know much about it. Dune Awakening, maybe. Lots of open world survival MMO. I feel like there was like a strategy game that just came out. Dune Spice Wars is another game. There's
Yeah.
actually, I'm looking through Google now. It's a whole Wikipedia page for a list of games based on Dune.
Wow.
Oh, some of these are board games.
Okay, that makes
But
sense.
still not quite like what you're saying of like you want an open world, like
Yeah,
hang out in the spice world.
right. As I was thinking about, what were kind of some bad examples, I was thinking about I had not even kind of registered. There's this when I was watching House of the Dragon, every single episode there would be an ad for this like tie-in phone app game that I would always
Okay.
skip over because it looks so crappy. And
Is it like for Game of Thrones?
yeah, it's
Okay.
like augmented reality where like
Okay.
you
Yeah.
pick an egg, you hatch it, and then that's it. That would be, I would say, an example of a bad
Okay.
uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
licensed video
Right.
game. But I think that the Game of Thrones world would be a really cool one
Yeah.
to have like a big like open world video game because there are so many like distinct cultures and houses and like a very defined geography, and I think that would be a really cool one to have.
Yeah. I'm like kind of shocked that there hasn't really had that, given how big Game of Thrones is.
Yeah.
That'd be crazy. Well, wild. I wonder why that hasn't really happened. There's a. It looks like there's like some sort of role playing game, but more so of like I don't know, more point and click and less of a Hogwarts Legacy kind of vein. Man,
Yes. Yeah. I
gotcha.
think a lot of these games fail in just deciding that people will pay for this game no
Yes.
matter how crappy it is if we put the name of this franchise on it. And that is
Yes.
insulting.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And that's like you're saying, of getting these ads for like the mobile game. It feels like the movie tie-in game has become a lost art, but they all just moved to
Mhm.
mobile, and now it's just all these crappy mobile games.
Yeah. Yeah. I was
Yeah.
thinking about how, like, yeah, you used to get all of these video games that would go with movies, and that's like
And
pretty rare now.
yeah, I'm sure it's way harder to line up the release timing, which is probably why a lot of these games are really bad because they were rushed out the door.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, that's long gone. But I guess it's easier to make a match three mobile game or yeah, one of those things. What I was thinking of is there's kind of this like sort of new genre of like a sandbox chaos game, like Goat Simulator or Entitled Goose Game might fall in that. But I want a Calvin and Hobbes video game where you just
Oh,
goofing off, playing Calvin
yeah.
ball. Like there's no objective, just be Calvin and Hobbes, run around the woods, get into
Yes.
trouble.
That would
I
be
think it'd be.
great.
I don't think Bill Watterson will ever let that happen, but I would enjoy it. It'd be a great time. Um, as one other shout out to, I feel like the Last Airbender needs a really good video game because
Oh,
there's
yeah.
been a handful of them and they've all been just pretty bad.
Yeah.
Like the most recent one came out really recently and it was incredibly bad. So
Yeah. Well, that remake apparently was pretty bad too, the live action one.
I watched it actually. It was better than I thought, but that's a solid 5 out of 10. So I don't know. Yeah, I'll give it credit where it's due.
Yeah.
Well, Biza, as we wrap up here, what are you playing?
Well, I just mentioned I am playing Star Wars Outlaws.
Yes, nice,
Um, Still pretty early in that. And
nice,
then I just started a D&D group. So
nice.
I have been
Yeah,
revisiting or going back to Baldur's Gate 3 a little bit to
nice.
like basically just steal my character from that game
There you go.
to
Perfect.
play Dungeons and Dragons.
Incredible. What great news. I
Yes.
love that. Well, I am playing some Stardew Valley. I think I mentioned that last episode, but it's still going strong. I'm back in it. It
Yeah.
sucked me in.
Always.
I thought I was out. They
That's your
brought me back
perennial
in.
game.
That's true. I can do no other. Well, Elizabeth, thanks again for joining me. Where else are you out on the internet?
I'm just a lurker on Twitter, Instagram,
Yeah,
Facebook.
well, good for you.
That's all.
Well, we always appreciate the occasional like, let you know that you're still out there. Uh,
Yes.
Well, thank you all for listening in, and Biz, thanks for joining me for this podcast. Great to have you here. You
Thank
can
you.
follow us on the major podcasting services. You can find us on the proper socials at Quick Play Pod, and let us know what's your favorite license game. That's all the time we have for today. Thanks. Bye.